Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? This ain't murder three. Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Coffee. Without it, we would never have had the Industrial Revolution. We'd all be still living in Europe in mud huts. Here in Laredo, we have the Organic Man Coffee Trike. 4501 McPherson, the best coffee on the planet. If you can't get to Laredo, you can order from the Organic Man Coffee Trike.shop. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Don't forget, the Out of This World UFO Open Mic Festival and Conference is just around the corner. April 7th, 8th, and 9th in Edinburgh, Texas. I'll be there all 3 days trying to sell some of my books and trying to help out where they need me. This year's UFO Conference speakers list includes Christopher O'Brien, Daniel Jones, who's been on the show in the past, Ken Gerhardt, who also has been on the show, Noe Torres, who has been on the show, and Peter Robinson. Don't miss out. Get your tickets today. You don't want to wait till the last minute and then show up at the front door and find out they've sold out of tickets. My wife was thumbing through her text messages when she came across a news story saying that the Mary Kay headquarters in the Ukraine had been shelled by Russian troops. There was a picture of a huge building quickly becoming nothing but rubble. She was a bit upset, wondering why anybody would destroy a cosmetics company. The article was being circulated amongst just about all the Mary Kay folks. A little while later, she found out the photograph was a fake. The whole story was just clickbait. Someone thought it'd be a good idea to send out a fake story to be seen by thousands of people, mostly women. We got to discussing what kind of a person would bother to write up a fake story, and not just a short thing, but several pages, knowing that eventually the truth would come out and the writer would look like a total idiot. An interesting thought came to my wife. What if the person writing the article wasn't concerned with telling the truth or being found out? What if the writer was more interested in the reaction the story would produce from those reading it? I just think of all the Mary Kay consultants all reading that story and having any kind of a reaction to it. There would be grief, sorrow, anger, confusion, you name it. There would be all kinds of emotions going on all over the planet in every country where the company does business. All these emotions being generated, causing energy. This is the usual kind of conversation around our house. We talk about strange things all the time. Who or what would want emotional energy? Some kind of unknown, unseen being feeding off our emotions. My wife said it sounded like the Oscuros, a hidden group of people or entities that feed on emotions. When doing a ghost investigation, Ishmael will ask any guests if they're afraid of what's about to happen. Anyone who is scared or nervous is going to be giving off a lot of energy. The spirits and the ghosts will be able to feed on this and possibly show up or at least communicate with us in some way. The scared guests will go first on any walks. Ghosts are welcome during any investigation. Those other nasty beings are avoided at all costs. Elementals are spirits that never lived as humans. They never had any of our values or our love of life. A ghost will have had some kind of a life experiences. They'll know what it's like to live and die. Some folks like to lump fairies and elves into the elemental group. They consider these earth spirits. Fairies and elves have become thought of as being friendly little creatures. It's nothing like what they're really like. I did a show a while ago about little people, little beings, elves, fairies, all the usual creatures out there, and the true stories behind these legends, they're a lot nastier than you'd expect. Others consider elementals to be something along the lines of demons. Evil spirits looking to enter a human and use that person for whatever weird agenda they might have. Usually this will involve bad things that will lead to people having emotional as well as physical trauma. These demons are fed by this energy coming from our minds. Some folks have said the unseen feeders are related to the lizard men, or the reptilians. Once more, it depends on who you ask as to what a reptilian is. Some say they are nasty aliens here to use humans as food. Others say they are aliens, only they came here to help us. They want to teach us how to become more enlightened so we can join the Galactic Federation. Still, other people say the reptilians are a second race of beings who once lived alongside us. Thousands of years ago, something happened that caused them to move into the underground spaces. The caves and tunnels that run all over under our feet are the domain of the reptilians. Paul Benowitz started off as a highly respected physicist who came across secret projects being conducted by the Air Force and the NSA at Kirkland Air Force Base in New Mexico. He believed these projects were somehow related to cattle mutilation and local alien abductee stories that were common in the area. His investigations led him to the town of Dulce. There's a base that operates in Dulce that is said to be used for operations involving a group of unfriendly extraterrestrials who use the 7th level underground to conduct genetic engineering experiments. These extraterrestrials are commonly identified as being the reptilians. Phil Schneider was an explosives engineer who worked for the U.S. government. He had a high-level security clearance, and so he was allowed to work in military installations all over the country. In 1979, he was helping build a secret underground base in Dulce, New Mexico. Schneider said he was almost always working alongside military special forces. As he and his crew were drilling into an underground cavern, they came face to face with reptilians. A gun battle broke out and somewhere around 60 men were killed. Schneider was seriously wounded, but he managed to survive. He spent the rest of his life telling people about his encounter. Schneider said the government was trying to shut him up, and in January 1996, apparently they succeeded. His death was ruled a suicide, but the circumstances were very odd. If these alien creatures were here to feed on us, They may have been using their minds to control other humans to have them do the bidding of the reptilians. If a giant reptile were to show up at someone's house, the neighbors would probably complain. If the reptilians sent some humans to take out anyone drawing attention to them, few would pay any attention. Some people looking into the reptilians say they can control people's minds. They can also extract energy from us in the form of emotions. As people are watching all the bizarre things going on around our planet, they will have emotional reactions. This is what the aliens are here to collect. Animal mutilations make very little sense. If the aliens wanted to steal a cow and make hamburgers, why drop the cow back where it's going to be found? The same would go for the government. Steal a cow, chop it up, and then dispose of the remains somewhere nobody will find them. That makes perfect sense. Steal a cow, chop it up, and then drop it close to where you stole it? I know some criminals are a bit short in the thinking department. They tend to think no way are they going to get caught just before the handcuffs are being placed on their wrists. The folks making these elaborate cow-stealing travels into ranch land have got to be a lot smarter than the guys behind bars. Yet, they constantly do things that should lead to discovery of who and how cattle mutilations take place. They either don't care, knowing the government won't look into these matters, or they want to be just public enough to sow fear and confusion. A psyop, if you will. I've known a few guys in psyops. They were all kind of squirrely. Odd folks who had some weird ideas on how to conduct a war. Things like killing the enemy, cutting parts off, and leaving the body where it would be found. Doing things that would mess with the minds of the dead man's comrades. Another group of people have come out with the idea that creatures like Bigfoot and Dogman are doing the same thing. Scaring people to get an energy boost. Thinking about most encounters, people will say they ran into one of these cryptids and were chased along some forest trail. The witness will tell how they ran for their lives, thinking the pursuers were going to kill them. The motivating factor was fear. The witness said they would run along the trail with some oversized, hairy thing right behind them, yet they managed to survive. We hear from groups of witnesses who tell about being chased but never caught. A creature with several feet over us would also have a speed advantage. A half-man, half-dog would be able to outrun us with little effort. Seldom do any of these witnesses say the guy in the rear disappeared and was never seen again. Now, people do go missing all the time, even in groups where their companions see them ahead or behind on the trail and then they vanish. This seldom happens when a cryptid has been spotted. Consider this. You're being chased through the woods by a huge dogman. It's close enough you know it's still behind you, but it never gets any closer. Now, how come? It has the physical advantage over you. It probably knows the woods far better. Plus, it has all of its animals' senses to call upon. Yet you still get away with only a wild story to tell. If the creature chasing you is feeding on the emotions being broadcast from you and anybody with you, could this be the reason it showed itself in the first place? You may think you look like a tasty snack to these creatures, while it is really there to scare you into an emotional dump for its dinner. The creature might not even look like a giant man-ape or a dog-man. Knowing how us humans will respond, maybe the creature is only projecting something sure to scare the pants off of us. The reptilians are supposed to be able to control our minds. They are said to carry a small machine on their belt that causes us to see them as being human, while in fact they are humanoid lizards. When it's time to feed, they turn their machine to a different setting, and suddenly we see a giant monster. Don't get me wrong. I do believe in Bigfoot and Dogman. I'm just wondering why, with so many sightings, there is so little actual contact. There are a few who will say they were grabbed or touched by a Bigfoot, and not many who say a Bigfoot killed one of their companions while in the woods. The idea of cryptid creatures being seen in order to feed on energy might upset a few folks out there. The folks who say Bigfoot is a giant ape that somehow is lucky enough to live all over the world without leaving a body behind. Now, I know that no one has ever found a dead bear in the woods, yet we know there are bear out there. By adding paranormal to the story of Bigfoot, I tend to upset a lot of researchers who call me a woo. Some people say the reptilians are a form of parasite. They talk about how so many anti-parasitic drugs are being pulled from the market because the reptilians told their underlings in Washington to stop with these drugs because they're having adverse effects on the humanoid lizards. This would lead me to believe the reptilians are actually eating people and not just sucking energy from us. There are a lot of folks out there saying reptilians do eat people, as well as their underlings. They point out how certain members of the elites are so gosh darn old, yet they're still running around as if time and age don't have any bearings on them. There could be an unknown feeder preying on our emotions, not just unknown to us, but unknown to themselves as well. You probably know someone who you just don't want to be around, one-on-one, because when you're with them, you feel drained. This person might be very friendly. They may act just like everybody else you know, but being alone with them tends to draw out all your energy. Those in the know call them psychic vampires. The thing to keep in mind is most of these folks don't know they're sucking life from those around them. Most seem very up and alive. They get more energy as time goes by. As this person is gaining strength, those around them are slowly getting a bit worn out. The fewer people present, the more each person feels the pinch. There are also some psychic vampires that don't care if they're draining those around them or not. Have you ever seen a situation where someone berates their coworker? Usually it's the boss to their employees, and they look as if they are getting energized as they stand there yelling and screaming and putting others down. People who enjoy putting other people down. It's their fuel, their nourishment. Not only do they enjoy dressing down others, they're feeding on it. There are others who are what we call the life of the party. They like to be the center of attention. They literally feed on the attention from their friends or family. They want attention in just about every gathering. As the party or gathering goes on, these folks seem to get more amped up. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. When you burn a piece of wood, you are changing a solid to a gas. You also are creating heat and sometimes smoke. The wood may be destroyed, but the energy inside it is changed. When in the presence of a psychic vampire, you are exchanging energy with them. It leaves your body and enters theirs. One quick and easy way to deal with a psychic vampire is to stay away from them. This might be hard to do if this is a coworker or your boss. Another solution is said to be you think to yourself, the attack is having no effect on you. This is a lot harder than you might think. People are emotional. It's what makes us human. Some are far too emotional, while others not quite enough. It would seem the more power and ambition a person has, the less other people's feelings matter. The powerhouses of business tend to be closer to serial killers than to the rest of society. You have to deal with those around you unless you want to go live on a mountain and hunt your dinner every day. The folks who look into psychic vampires have suggested a few things to maybe help you out. A narcissist, the me-first kind of person, everything is all about them. They have a grandiose sense of self-importance and entitlement. They love attention, and they crave admiration. They also lack empathy and have a limited capacity for love. If you don't do things their way, they become punishing, withholding, or cold. Don't buy into their way of thinking. They will try to make you feel like less so they can feel like more. No one ever makes themselves look good by making others look bad. But there are some who make themselves feel better by making others feel bad. When a narcissist tries to put you down, just walk away. Be polite if you can, but put distance between you and them. Don't get emotional. That's what they're looking for. Once their meal has escaped, they'll feel a bit drained. Their natural tendency will be to go looking for somebody else to attack. If you respond with emotions, they win. The victim runs around with a poor me attitude. No matter what is wrong, they never take responsibility for their actions. The world is always against them. It's the reason for their unhappiness. In today's world, we see a lot more of this nonsense. Those in charge are bombarding us with the idea of it's all someone else's fault. Those people over there, you know, the ones who voted for the other guy. When you offer a solution to their problems, they'll always say, yeah, but my condition is different. Yeah, but I tried that, but it didn't work for me. As soon as you realize you're dealing with a victim mentality, listen for a few minutes, then come up with a reason you can no longer be there. Once you know this particular person is a victim of the world, come up with some good-sounding reason you can't spend too much time on their perceived problems. You have to take your grandmother to the vet, or you have to take the dog to school. Now, try to not use the same excuse too many times, but at the same time, try to get away from this person. Stop talking to them. All you're doing is feeding their psychic vampirism. By standing there listening as they explain why they can't do anything, you are only enabling them to continue on this path. As their story of grief and oppression expands, you're going to begin having an emotional response. This is going to feed the victim. You're not helping them, you're hurting yourself. They're going to drain you if you let them. It's not their fault, they'll tell you. This is what they're going to tell you if you're willing to listen. Be nice, but don't allow them to drink away your energy. The controller wants to be in charge of everything, including your life. They have all the answers because you don't. Their catchphrase is, "Let me tell you what you need to do." A lot of in-laws fall into this category. The odd thing is, it's not the guy's mother-in-law. It's the wife who gets stepped on the most. This will take some finesse and work. You could say, yeah, whatever, and go on your merry way, but this tends to make Thanksgiving a bit tense. A quick solution is to say, "Thanks, I'll try that," and then ignore what they tell you. There are hundreds of sites, all with what they consider to be good advice. Some say run around with a crystal in your pocket, and when dealing with a psychic vampire, you put your hand in the pocket and you hold the crystal. Some of these rocks are expensive. I have a big quartz crystal I carry on ghost hunts. It's my just in case this might work thing. I used to carry it when we were doing cell shakedowns, going in and searching prisoners. I would have the crystal in my pocket, and I would hold it once in a while. Did it work? Maybe. I never walked away from a cell shakedown with any bad feelings or feeling drained. Another site says you're to imagine a white light coming from above your head and extending down to the ground at your feet. The white light is supposed to be a protection. You envision it as being like a shield. It will block the psychic extraction of energy. You can say this is God or one of the angels there to protect you. If you don't like that, just say it's your higher power protecting you. Some folks say you need to wear certain colored clothing. Purple is one, blue, red, things like that. And as I was looking at these colors that were recommended, I found out that these were the chakra colors. Red, orange, yellow, green, light blue, dark blue, and purple. I go by the idea that the colors are not nearly as important as the thoughts behind them. You can use the colors to focus on chakras, but it's not the most important part. It's what you do with them as you're thinking. There's also the stories of people who thought they were living in a haunted house. They would hear strange noises at night and see shadows moving about when there's no one there to cast them. After putting up with this for a while, the solution would come up. They should move away and leave all this spirit activity behind. Once in a new location, they would discover the hauntings had followed them. Their new home, even if it was brand new dwelling, would have the same noises and shadows. The idea would come to them, the house hadn't been haunted, it was them that was being haunted. The next step would be to seek out a priest or a religious leader to come do a blessing or an exorcism, or some form of cleansing to get rid of the spirits. What has surprised some folks is this didn't help either. They would become confused, thinking their religious people or their God or their higher power couldn't help them. On occasion, it turned out they were not dealing with spirits. The things causing all the problems would turn out to be aliens. Why aliens would be pretending to be ghosts is anyone's guess. Once more, we come to the possibility that these entities are trying to scare people in order to get an emotional response so they can feed on that energy. One example of this is the Stardust Ranch out in Arizona. I'm reading the book about the place, written by the man who lived there, after listening to 2 podcasts about what had gone on out there in the past. I listened to The Belief Hole. It's 3 brothers who do a pretty good job of podcasting. They mentioned that Tony Merkel had also talked about the ranch, so I went back and I listened to the confessionals from a few years ago. The man has also been on Coast to Coast back in 1997, I believe. The story got me interested, so now I'm halfway through the book. I might have to do a show on it someday soon. In the story, he refers to the Gnostics several times and some of the Gnostics' beliefs. I'll get to more on that in a little bit. I always find it odd when I'm doing a show and I reference something, and then a couple of days later I run across a whole lot of references to the same thing. This wasn't the only time people thought maybe they were dealing with spirits or ghosts, only to discover that aliens were causing all of the problems. A guy named Bob was being awoken late at night by sounds of footsteps in his hallway. Sometimes he would hear a loud buzzing sound. He began to believe he was living in a haunted house, until he discovered the cause of his hauntings was aliens. He had exhausted all of the usual solutions. Then he tried hypnosis. It was a regression therapy session. During the session, he found out he was actually being abducted on a regular basis by aliens. Parasites feed on their host, eventually becoming filled with whatever it is they need. Most will drop off and go looking for someplace else to sleep it off. Paranormal parasites want to feed all the time. Once they find a tasty host or one that is unable to fight them off, they might just suck every drop of energy from that person, leaving them either spent or completely empty. Once your energy gets too low, you may never recover. The old hag is one such creature. She shows up in the middle of the night and perches on a victim's chest. If her victim wakes up, they find it difficult to breathe. The old hag will suck as much life out of her prey, leaving only once she is satisfied. The victim tends to never fully recover, going through life with all manner of illnesses and discomfort. The victim usually doesn't live as long as they might have had the old hag not sucked the life out of them. Nick Redfern has written a lot of books. One from 2018 is called Paranormal Parasites. Here's just a brief excerpt from his writings. The world around us is not as it appears to be. In fact, far from it. As we go about our daily business, working and living our lives, behind the scenes something dark and dangerous is taking place. And it has been going on since the dawn of civilization. Most people remain oblivious to the truth and don't even realize it. Now and again, however, someone will stumble upon the startling reality that potentially affects and dictates the lives of just about all of us. What am I talking about? Nothing less than a monstrous collection of supernatural entities that terrify and torment us and have done so for millennia. They do far more than that, however. They feed upon us. Like bloated paranormal leeches, they suck us dry as they seek to fuel themselves with our psychic energy. High states of emotion, a sexual energy, and human life force. They hate us and despise us, but paradoxically they cannot live without us. Extensive data exists that strongly suggests that the human soul, essence, or life force is something that all of these entities, the vast majority of which exist in states of pure energy, but that can take on just about any form they choose, need to survive. Have you ever woken up drained and utterly exhausted from a terrifying nightmare that didn't seem like just another regular dream? If the answer is yes, then you may have been fed upon by these infernal things. When we sleep, we are at our most vulnerable, and that's exactly how they want us. A dream is not always a dream, as strange as that may sound. Sometimes it's an indication that, as you sleep and as your guard is down, these voraciously hungry monsters are in essence eating you. Among these creatures are the shadow people, hostile things that typically manifest between 1 and 4 a.m., and who have the ability to paralyze us and drain our bodies of energy in much the same way that a vampire of folklore would drain people of blood. In fact, such distorted tales of vampirism almost certainly had their origins in the world and actions of these multi-dimensional things. Equally dangerous, but also part of the equation, are what can accurately be termed supernatural seducers. Dangerous entities that thrive on sexual energy, such as orgone energy, as theorized and documented by Wilhelm Reich. A highly charged sexual dream may be deliberately initiated by such things, which over the centuries have been referred to as incubus, a succubus, Lilith, and the old hag. Also relevant to this angle is the reason why so many supernatural encounters occur at so-called Lover's Lane locations. If you'd like to read his book, or all of his books if you have the time, you can find them at Amazon.com. The really best way to buy Nick Redfern's books is by attending an event where he is speaking. That way you can get the book signed and maybe have a few words with him. Nick is always willing to talk to those with like minds and interests. He's one of the more approachable people I've run into in all my years going to different UFO and Bigfoot conferences. He mentioned shadow people. No one really knows what shadow people are or what they're doing in our world. Back when I first started writing, I was big into horror. I wanted to write things that would keep people awake at night. I hammered out one book called Shadows. A police detective gets fired for drinking on the job. Well, what do you expect? He was an alcoholic. He has to take some huge steps to get back on his feet. Looking for work, he takes a job in a small-town sheriff's department. The bodies begin to pile up. Murder-suicides that start happening all over town. The trouble is, the killer is always found dead at the scene. I was halfway through with the story with absolutely no idea how I was going to end. Lots of blood, so I don't recommend this for delicate readers. I was talking to my nephew one day. The subject of the book came up. I mentioned how the entity was preying on its victims. He told me his mother used to tell about how shadow beings would attach themselves to people in a less than fully conscious state and possess them in order to do bad things. As she was full-blooded Ho-Chunk Indian, a feather, not dot. After talking to my nephew, I was able to figure out how the story should go, and I came up with a rather unique ending. The idea of shadow beings attaching themselves to unwilling and unknowing hosts in order to do what they want, in order to fill their needs, isn't just a theory invented recently. This may go back hundreds or thousands of years in Indian legends. If you want to read my book, Shadows, you can find it at Amazon. I was just starting out writing and I made some mistakes. I received a few nasty grams from those who consider their opinions a valuable seed to be sown across the planet. I did discover some of those who like horror stories can be a bit nasty when it comes to giving their opinions. Some of these folks are sick. I decided to switch from horror to humor just to get away from them. I'd rather have a good laugh than a bad scare. Horror is a lot easier than humor. Just tip a 55-gallon drum of blood over the pages and most folks will be happy. Now, my idea of funny might not be your idea of funny. I am constantly having to ask people if they think certain lines in my books are funny. Some folks don't get my sense of humor. Another take on parasites is what's called spiritual parasites. Kind of the same as a paranormal parasite, except instead of stealing energy, they want to steal your soul. This parasite is believed to be passed on from generation to generation in the form of abuse. For unknown reasons, children who grow up in abusive families are 10 times more likely to become abusive once they grow up. The reason for this is believed to be the parasite has attached itself to their soul and is now in the process of recreating itself on the next generation. Instead of sucking energy out of their host, they are using them to live on from one life to the next. Kind of like living forever while making people's lives miserable. On occasion, the abuser is said to be very loving and only to suddenly switch gears and go on the offensive, as if something is taking over their brain and running things for a while. Counselors and doctors have been trying to stop this process for years. They try working on the person's thought process instead of looking into anything paranormal or spiritual. Someone somehow needs to come up with an anti-parasitic medication for abuse. There might just be one if you're willing to go see either a priest or a spiritual counselor. Maybe an exorcist or a complete body and house cleansing. A soul-sucking parasite that is intent on simply living on in its next host. I'm sure there are a few of y'all saying, enough already. This can't possibly be true. We don't know what is true anymore. The news agencies tell us something we all know isn't true. They wave their arms and tell us this is how it is, even though we know that what they're telling us is a lie. That whole let's go what's-his-name is a good example. I watched the newscast. I know what the crowd was yelling. The reporter was obviously confused when she said, "That's not what they're telling you." You hear it with your own ears, and then the news tell us that's not what you heard. The newspapers show photographs saying a building was blown up and there's some poor old lady crying over the devastation. A few weeks later, they show the exact same image saying another building was blown up. They didn't even bother to Photoshop the thing. Same building, same woman crying out front. It worked twice, so they decided let's show that image again and claim another building was blown up, and they show the same woman crying in front of the same building. I remember seeing this photo 3 times and reading the article that said each of these images were in different cities. The news ran a photo saying this was from some foreign country where a huge shootout was taking place. Too bad the photo was from a Kentucky live fire range. Just a bunch of civilians having a good time firing weapons and Next thing you know, the news is telling us that some country is in a civil war. You can ask yourself, who do they think they're fooling? Well, apparently quite a few people, because they keep getting away with it. How many times have you seen images of dead bodies all lined up with blankets covering them? One of the bodies doesn't seem able to lie still. A body moves or the wind blows and a hand reaches up and grabs the blanket to keep it from showing who's under it. How about using an image from a movie to show all the dead folks in a hospital in Italy? They did it, and they keep doing it, not caring there might be some of us out here that have gotten wise to them. They are content to keep the sheeple under control and let the few conspiracy theorists wander around free. What are they doing showing all of these fake images? They might be preying on the emotions coming from the people that look at these images and think they're real. Why do they do it? Somewhere up the chain of command is a person or a thing controlling the strings. And that person or thing might be getting energy because of all those fake images. It does get worse. Now, say you want to buy something and you go to Amazon because it's easy and they have just about everything. You see the item you're looking for, and just to be sure, you scroll down and check the reviews. The item you're looking at has 5-star rating from 10,000 people. Well, it must be good if 10,000 people liked it enough to leave a review, or maybe not. Companies are now hiring others to do reviews. They just pile on good reviews to make their product look better. They also hire people to give competitors a bad review, or a few 100,000 bad reviews. On YouTube, you see some kid who talks about, well, let's just say he has a podcast on fonts. He has 500,000 followers. You wonder, are there that many people that listen to a podcast on fonts? No, you can pay to get followers on your page. I don't know how much it costs, but I don't want to look in just in case I start receiving thousands of ads from these companies. But there are companies out there that you pay a small fee and they create followers for you. Agnosticism was a collection of religious ideas and systems which coalesced in the late 1st century among Jewish and early Christian sects. These various groups emphasized personal spiritual knowledge over the orthodox teachings, traditions, and authority of religious institutions. In 325, the folks running things came out with their version of the Bible, and they said that all others were heresy. This led to a lot of bloodshed as some religious folks tried to wipe out the Gnostics. Most of their manuscripts were burned. Until the discovery of the Nag Hammadi documents in 1945, almost nothing was known of the core teachings of the Gnostics. The word Gnostic means simply one who knows, but carries the implication of special insight that pertains to the hidden core of the human experience. Certain Gnostics taught that humans are deviated from their proper course of evolution by a bizarre species of inorganic being who inhabits the solar system beyond the Earth. They named this species the Archons, or the Archons. The Greek word archon means authority, and the Archons are sometimes called the authorities. In the movie The Matrix, the agents that look an awful lot like MIBs are the authorities who will police the simulated world looking for human replicas like Neo who show signs of waking up to their scam. The Gnostic idea was that the Archons were trying to impose a program of mind control or soul enslavement in order to keep mankind distracted by material problems and concerns imposed by our fear of death and ignorant of the true divine nature of our souls. A Gnostic perspective suggests that the Matrix scenario presents a version of the genuine spiritual dilemma, a true and daunting challenge that faces humanity. In their warnings about deception by the Archons, the Gnostics may have foreseen the risks of AI 2,000 years before it was thought up. The manner in which the Archons operate, their strategy of simulation, as it were, as described in certain Gnostic texts, does not involve advanced technology, but religious ideology. According to Gnostic texts, archontic deviation of the human species is a form of mass behavior modification achieved through blind conformity to certain false beliefs. They said the belief in salvation from a sinful condition by the intervention of God or gods was only representative. It is known that Gnostic ideas deeply influenced Philip K. Dick, widely considered as the greatest sci-fi writer of the 20th century. Gnosticism presents theological and cosmological beliefs as if plotted in a science fiction novel. This characterization of Gnostic ideas is suggested by scholar Richard Smith in the afterword to the Nag Hammadi Library in English. Gnosticism motifs have been identified in that most visionary of our modern literature, science fiction. In the science fiction novels of the prolific writer Philip K. Dick, Gnosticism is consciously employed. 1,700 years ago, the Gnostics were mostly wiped out during the beginning of the fall of the Roman Empire. Folks were talking about the creature from another planet that was able to enter people's minds and control them. Mind Parasites. We can only accept the translation of these ancient texts as being correct. I don't speak or read ancient French or Latin. A lot of what we think we know is coming to us from others who just might have gotten the translation wrong. This could be because the ancient writings are hard to read, the meanings aren't properly understood, or someone with an agenda said to change what was originally written. The whole history of being written by the victors, it is also written by those who want to control us. I hope I didn't upset too many folks out there. I don't know if any of this is true. I don't know what to believe anymore. You do need to think for yourself. Too many folks sit in front of their TV set waiting to be told what to think. It's right up there with the government saying only crazy people see UFOs, and then the Pentagon comes out and says, oh yes, those things. They're not ours and they're not theirs, and we don't know whose they are. They admit UFOs are real, yet a lot of people I know still think only crazy people see UFOs. If you enjoyed tonight's show, I did good. Sometimes these shows take a turn I'm not expecting. I wasn't expecting to run across 1,700-year-old writings on creatures from outer space. If you want to support my endeavor, check out TeePublic and buy a Strange Things t-shirt. Or you can get one of my books from Amazon.com. Don't forget, the UFO Conference in Edinburgh is coming up soon, April 7th, 8th, and 9th. It's only a short drive from where I am, but some of y'all, like the folks over in Russia and Australia, well, it might take you a few days to get here if you're interested in coming. The Edinburgh Out of This World UFO Festival and Conference is the third best UFO gathering on the planet. If you don't come, you'll never know what you're missing. It's a good time. It's 3 days of fun and festival for the whole family. The first night is on Thursday. It will be an open mic where people will show up to tell their own stories. You'll hear some stories about UFOs and abductions that you're never going to see on TV, and you're probably never going to read it in a book. Then Friday, they have the huge UFO Festival. It's fun for the whole family. You'll see people running around dressed like aliens, and you can get yourself a tinfoil hat. You can talk to all of the speakers because they'll be walking around right there in public where you can get close to them and ask them some questions. And then Saturday, that's the big day. That's the conference where all of the speakers will get up on stage and entertain you with stories about UFOs and aliens. It's April 7th, 8th, and 9th in Edinburgh. Don't wait till the last minute to buy your tickets, because they might just sell out ahead of time. Until next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, they say murdered 3? Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.